Good day everyone, we are Group 4, will present our observations, reflection, and conclusion about our terrarium. So when we say terrarium, it is a transparent enclosure for keeping or raising plants or usually small animals indoors. So we use a betta fish, aquatic plants, and small stones to our terrarium. So let's proceed to our observations. First, let me introduce to you my name. I'm Jelly Tabon. Our observation on day 1 to 2, the betta fish is making a adaptation movement, like it is moving around the aquatic plants and making active on searching a food. The water in the container is clear and there is no such a changes on the self-contained ecosystem. The focal point of day 1 is the behavior of the betta fish, which is being uncomfortable to the new environment. So let's proceed to our observation on day 3 to 4. The first thing we observe in our terrarium is that there are bubbles in the top of the water and dewdrops near the lid of the jar. In short, evaporation happens. The betta fish is actively roaming around the aquatic plants. We think that it is searching for food and being anxious of its new habitat. So let's proceed to our day 5 to 6. The betta fish is hiding in the aquatic plants. It takes hours before it changes its position. It behaves gentle, but you can observe that it is in the adaptation process because the betta fish is hiding on the aquatic plants. So the dewdrops and moisture is observed in the side and the top of the jar. So let's proceed to our observation on day 7 to 8. The moisture and the dewdrops in the side and on the top of the jar is continues to increase. The betta fish is being frantic because of the new environment. It continues to hide in the aquatic plants and small rocks. So our observation on day 9 to 10, the aquatic plants leaves are gradually falling off. The betta fish prefer to stay near the lid of the jar rather than on the bottom of the water. So let's proceed to our reflection, which is discussed by Joshua Simbrano about the biodiversity. Thank you.
My name is Joshua M. Sembrano and I will be discussing the biodiversity. The ability of its inhabitants and their environment to collaborate to support the system in what distinguishes a true ecosystem. A series of finely tuned life cycles and energy transfers that will determine the system's success or failure. A self-sustaining terrarium is essentially a finely balanced plant's ecosystem sealed within a closed container. That means the plant's environmental conditions, microfauna inhabitants, and even the container itself must all be carefully considered so that they can work in harmony together.
Good afternoon everyone, my name is Naila Castillo Sanchez. I will discuss about the reflection of a terrarium in the ecosystem. Both an ecosystem and a terrarium contain plants, as well as small animals that can thrive in a terrarium. It's a miniature ecology. It needs soils for plants to grow and plants provide oxygen to live species. Living species such as the betta fish represents human and animals who provide food to plants. We call it a food because the poop of the betta fish is the one that can make the plants grow. A terrarium is a small environment that can survive on its own, considering having a smaller version of an ecosystem where all living things coexist peacefully. Our primary consumer is the plants because they are the one that acquired the energy from the sunlight for the photosynthesis, and the fish is our secondary consumer because the betta fish also contains or consumes the oxygen that came from the plants. Let's proceed now to the source of energy.
Everyone, I'm Nicole Faith M. Quisada and I will be discussing the source of energy of our terrarium. So, the main source of energy of our terrarium comes from the sun. We place them in an area where they can be exposed to sunlight but not directly because it might harm the living organisms inside. And then the sunlight emit, and the plants inside will release oxygen, and as well as the betta fish release carbon dioxide and feed through the plants. And that's how they keep each other alive, and the cycle repeats. That's all. Thank you.
I'm Laureline Rivera, and I'll be reporting water cycle. So, what is water cycle? Water cycle is the way that water moves all around the terrarium. As it changes its states, it's called water cycle. Water inside the terrarium evaporates and becomes water vapor. As water vapor rises in the air, it cools and condenses into tiny droplets. These tiny droplets accumulate and form clouds. Small water droplets fall back to the fish and plants as the water evaporates. Water from the terrarium either it's absorbed into the ground or runs off into air. Water absorbed into ground becomes groundwater. Water that runs off inside the jar flows to where it evaporates back into the air.
Hi, I am Pia Angeline B. Echegarin, and I will be discussing about ecological diversity. So first, let us define it. So in biology, it is an interacting group of various species in a common location. For example, a forest of trees and undergrowth plants inhabited by animals and rooted in soil containing bacteria and fungi to form a biological community. There are actually four main components of the ecological diversity, which can also be found in the terrarium as our project. First is the abiotic substances. These include basic inorganic and organic compound of the environment or habitat of the organism. Organic components of an ecosystem are carbon dioxide, water, nitrogen, and many more. Whereas inorganic components of an ecosystem are proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and amino acids, all of which are synthesized by the biota. Second one are the producers. So in our terrarium, the producers are the plants. So these are all other green plants. They are called ecosystem producers because they capture energy mainly from the sunlight, which is the non-organic source, and store some of the energy in the form of chemical bonds for the later use. Third are the consumers. In our terrarium, these are the fishes, or mainly the betta fish, which is used as in our project. They are heterotrophic organisms in the ecosystem which eat other living creatures. Last are the decomposers. In the terrarium, the decomposers are the waste coming from the betta fish. These take the energy and matter that they harvest during this feeding process for their own metabolism. Now let us proceed to the conclusion. So the objectives were achieved, and to conclude everything that we have discussed, biodiversity refers to the diversity of life on the planet or in a specific area or ecosystem. Both of them contain life, the biodiversity and the terrarium. They're relatively connected. The only difference that the terrarium is imprisoned but not in the biodiversity that we are living in. The key components involved in this project are sources of energy, mainly the sunlight, water cycle, and the ecological diversity. The terrarium itself represents the ecosystem we are living with. Through the terrarium, we learn that the ecosystem Diversity consists of four main components, including the abiotic substances, which include basic inorganic and organic compounds of the environment, producers, which capture energy from the sunlight, and the consumers, which are the heterotrophic organisms in the ecosystem that eat other living creatures inside it. Then the decomposers, which provide proteins for the living creatures. So once again, we are Group 4 and thank you for listening. We hope that you learned something from us. Have a good day.